All right, guys, it's mid-June, and we are just now coming out here to get our garden railroad set up and ready to go. Now, you might be wondering, mid-June, isn't that a little late to start to start the railroad and getting it up and running? Yeah, we had a really kind of weird spring here this year. A few things going on. The temperature didn't really come up until like mid-May, so it was a really chilly spring. So there wasn't like a lot of great days to come out and kind of work out here. The other thing is we got tons of rain. So like it seemed like every weekend for like 2 or 3 weeks, we were getting like 2-inch rainstorms. And those rainstorms are fine, but when you accumulate all that rain here in our area of New England, or at least where we live here in this town, we have a really high water table. So when you start accumulating a lot of inches of rain, that translates into a lot of wet basements. And so really what ends up happening is your priorities change from doing the things you want to do, like starting your garden railroad, to making sure your basement stays dry. So that was happening around here to us and a lot of our neighbors. So that took up some time. And then we had our regular yard maintenance. As you can see here, we kind of live in the woods back here, and so just the regular spring cleanup took a while. We had a ton of brush to burn. We can burn brush here up until the end of April, and so because we were getting so much rain, we only had so many good weekends to be able to do that and make sure like the brush was dry enough to burn and all that. So that took up some time, and we work full time here too, so we're doing all this like on the weekends and evenings and so forth. And then finally we had a project that we had in the wings here. If I zoom in over the other end of the yard there, you'll see that shed. We have a video for these for that small shed that's right behind the wood shed there. We have a video about a tour and an overview of those sheds, but we had planned those for last year. There's 2 of them back there, and that was part of the plan for the spring. But yeah, we had to clean out behind that, the brush and everything else behind that wood shed to make room for them. We had to build those pressure treated platforms and then assemble the shed. So that took a few weeks. So we feel now like we're kind of caught up here. Oh, the other thing that happened too was on our gazebo over there. We had a really windy winter, and so a few of those roof panels blew off of that gazebo, like 4 panels. And so at the beginning of the spring, I had to spend a weekend out there, repairing those. They went back together nice. They were a little bent up, because they fell, and they kind of torque if they're kind of blown off, from where they're being held down by the screws. But yeah, we were able to get them up there okay, and we actually ordered replacements just in case we want brand new ones up there. But yeah, it was a busy spring. So yeah, we're just getting to this now. So where do we go? So we have 4 main things we want to accomplish in order to get this thing opened up. So the first thing we want to do is get our pond back in order. And so the pond takes a little bit of a beating over the winter. You can see some of the stones are kind of misplaced. We'll have to put those back in place. And I'm not really super happy with this anyway, but this year I just don't have any time to redo it. So we'll get this back up and running as for this year. So that's one thing. The next thing is we bought some plants we had to replace some plants. So we bought some new plants like these dwarf Alberta spruces, which I love because they look like kind of G-scale pine trees, but they will get bigger. And so if they get too big for the railroad, we'll have to transplant them. But I'm kind of willing to take that chance that we can use them for a few years and then maybe transplant them. But yeah, down at that end there, one of our plants died, so we got a replacement there. And we have some here. You can see those pots right there are kind of going into the holes that are right next to them that look weed covered. Oh, that's another thing we have to do. We have to kind of weed or get some Roundup, take care of some of the stuff that kind of grows in. Weeds that kind of accumulate, even the grass that kind of encroaches there. So gotta get rid of that. And then the third thing we have to do is we have to clean the track. So if you look at the track here, you'll see it doesn't actually look too bad, but we definitely want to go over those and just make sure that we're looking at nice, shiny brass there and not that dull finish, which to me feels like there's probably some kind of a film on there that builds up over the summer and winter and all that. And then the last thing is put the buildings out, the buildings and the people and the die casts. So we'll have to clean off those stones. Those stones are the foundations for the buildings. Yeah, so those are the things that we have to do. Oh, this little red pad over here. We used to have a birdhouse there as our town hall. That birdhouse, ironically, was very G-scale looking. And so we just covered up the hole where the birds would go in just to make sure no critters settled in there. But then it kind of rotted away because it was kind of an untreated wood and whatever. So that lasted a couple years, but we do have a new Pico building that we're going to assemble, and that will be our new town hall. So that's not built yet, but we'll throw that out there as soon as that's done. So that'll be a new addition. Yeah, so that's where we have to go here over the next couple of days. We'll try to squeeze a couple days worth of work into one video here. We won't show you all the details, just the highlights. But the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get started with this pond, and we're going to start by pumping out that old water, black water, brackish water, whatever. We'll pump that out. We'll rinse out the inside and kind of loosen up all the gunk, and maybe pump that out a couple more times just to get the junk out of it. By then you'll be able to see the bottom, and then we'll fill it up for good, and we'll put some treatment in it, like a shock or something like that, to clean up the water. But that'll start with our pumps. So this is our transfer pump. It's a Drummond. We bought this from Harbor Freight a couple years ago, and it's worked pretty good. So this is the hose that sits in the pond that will, the inlet hose, if you will go on one of those ends there, and then the outlet hose, I don't have it out yet, but that'll just discharge the water into the woods behind me, or the kind of the clump of trees behind me, and then that's the pump for the waterfall. And we'll insert that, get the waterfall running, get that circulating, and then we'll be able to go on to the next thing, which will be the track cleaning. Well, maybe the plants. We'll probably do the plants before we clean the track. But yeah, we'll keep you up to date on every step. And by the end of this video, hopefully we'll have a train running. Okay, so you can see our setup here. We've got our inlet hose coming out of the water into the pump. That's the clear hose on the right. And then you see the black hose attached to the outlet. And now all we have to do is prime the pump. And what you should be able to see is in between those two hoses, where the two hoses attached to the pump, there's a little knob on top. That's just a cap that comes off, and you take that off, fill that with water, put the cap back on, and then we'll be able to plug it in and start pumping away. All right, look at how gross that is. We have a ton of leaves to pull out of there. The pump has just about gotten all the water it can out, so we're gonna get on our hands and knees, get those leaves out of there, and go on to the next step. Right, so as you can see here, we got pretty much down to the stone that's sitting in the bottom of the pond, and we got all the leaves out of there. So the next step is to just refill the pond with clean water, kind of spraying out all of the areas that look like they've got a bunch of dirt and things like that, and then pump that out. And through kind of a dilution kind of approach here, we should be able to pump all of the crud out of there. So let's take that step. The other thing we want to do is expose the top of the fountain where the water comes in, and just make sure that that kind of fountain reservoir is cleaned out. So we'll go ahead and wash that. Once the bottom part of the pond is filling up with water, as we rinse this out, we'll turn the pump on again. We'll get as much of that crap out of there that's kind of suspended in the water, and that'll do a little bit more to clean it out. And then we'll redo that process 2 or 3 times until we get some relatively clear water. All right, guys, here's our first refill since we did our initial cleaning and rinsing. And you can already see the bottom of the pond, so that's pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll pump this out, and then we'll fill it up one more time and get more stuff suspended in the water and pump that away. And then I think we'll be ready to fill it for good and then add some shock. Now, one thing you might be thinking is that, like I said, I think this is a 50-gallon pond. So I'm not just pumping the water away here. The first time I did, because the water was just totally gunky. But this time when I pump the water out, I'm actually going to use the water and water some plants, just so that we're not just completely wasting water here. So anyway, we're going to pump this out, and then we'll fill it up again, and we'll see where we're at. All right, so this is our second complete fill up here. And so you can see already how much clearer the water is. It's almost, you can see to the bottom and all that. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna pump this water out. And like I said, we'll water the plants with the water that we're pumping out. And then we'll fill it up one more time, and that'll be the final fill up. And then we'll add some shock or something like that, just to kind of sanitize the water a little bit. So let's go ahead and pump that out and fill her up again. You can also see how clear the hose is, the clear hose, how clear the water is going through the clear hose. It's no longer black and sludgy or anything like that. The other thing, by the way, when you're using a transfer pump like this, I might have called it a sump pump before, but I meant to call it a transfer pump, is that there is a direction of travel, or a flow direction arrow on the pump. And just make sure, this is kind of obvious stuff, but just make sure that when you hook it up, you are the direction of the pump is out of the pool and not in the pool. It's an easy mistake to make. All right, we're ready for the final fill up here, and the only thing that we are going to do before we start filling it with water is we're just going to attach our fountain hose to the pump, and that's just a radiator clamp that's with the hose. So we'll drop that into the bottom of the pond, and then we'll start filling. All right, our final filling is done, and we're at the point now where we can test out the water fountain feature, make sure there's no leaks in the hose or anything like that before we top off that water fountain. So let's do that. All right, the last thing we need to do is just treat the pool water here, or the pond water. So I'm just going to throw some pool shock in it. And remember, nobody's swimming in here or, drinking the water. So I usually put a lot in just to make sure that that water is completely sanitized. Some folks worry about wildlife coming in here to drink, birds and all that. But the way I figure it, pool has chlorine and shock in it, and animals drink out of those, and it doesn't bother them there. So I think we're probably okay doing it this way. So anyway, this is the last step. Just going to throw some pool shock in. Now that seems like a lot, but I'll probably not have to treat this again for quite a while. I think I might have treated it twice last summer. So anyway, that'll all dissolve. It looks kind of white, like you can see it on the edge under the water there where the pond gets to its like deep end. There's a little ledge there, but that'll all dissolve. And yeah, so our pond is up and running for the season. So the next thing up is planting some plants. All right, so now with our pond fountain running, we are on to step 2, and we've just completed that, which was to put the plants that we needed to plant into the ground. And so you can see here, there are no pots hanging around. And all the plants that we wanted to put in this year are in. Now that pond still looks a little milky there because it's still trying to work the that pool shock that we put in there yesterday through. So that'll probably take a couple days to clear up. But yeah, so far everything's running pretty good. We thought we'd skip to just showing you the final result here. We weren't going to make you sit through us planting. We do have a couple videos on planting plants. They don't get many views, but it shows you the technique we use for planting kind of through this stone bed. But yeah, I think the only thing here like that might look a little odd is those 3 plants in a row kind of cutting across. Those are there because we have a farm building. When we get to that point, we're putting the buildings out. We have a farm that's on the right side of those 3 bushes, and we just kind of redid those. The middle bush was already there. We put the other 2, the smaller ones, beside it. We transplanted those, and then our plan was to put a zoo kind of in that blank spot right there where you see that piece of stone, flat piece of stone. That's where our Dan's Burgers will go. But yeah, so planting done. Doesn't mean we're not going to add more plants during the course of the year. It's just the ones that we had kind of sitting here waiting to be planted are done. So the next step is going to be to clean the track. Alright guys, in order to clean our track, what we use is a drywall abrasive pad. It's basically like a mesh that you use to sand drywall. And what we typically use here, what we've been using the past couple of years, is this Gator, kind of an 80 grit clamp-on screen. Again, it's meant for drywall. And you can use it one of 2 ways. You can either use it with this handheld block here that you can see. It's kind of on its side, just so you can see what that looks like. But that's basically a handle that you just attach the drywall screen to, and then you can just kind of run it along the track. And then here is one that we typically use because we can stand up while we're doing it, but it's same type of thing. Pad clamps to the bottom on like a little shoe there, and then you can basically just stand up and run it along the track. Now when we do this, we don't sand the track like we're trying to sand paint off of something, not that forceful. We basically just run it along the track, really kind of under the weight of the pole, or maybe a little bit of pressure if we're using the handheld one. But the idea is just to get that track a little bit shiny so that you know you've gotten the film off it. So we're going to go ahead and clean our track, and then we'll be ready to go on to the next step. So as you can see, the pad is just about wide enough to get both rails. And he just kind of goes along and just kind of scrubs, and he's going to look at it and make sure that the track is getting shiny as he moves down the track. And this is really a quick operation. Now I know some purists out there may not like the idea of using an abrasive on the track because it'll create maybe some little micro grooves and things like that that might interfere with connectivity to the wheels on the locomotives. But honestly, in our experience, the locomotives run just fine after even a couple of years of cleaning our track this way. And it's just super easy. He can just move right along that track so quickly. And again, it's just a visual inspection. If it looks shiny, then I think all of the film is off. So he's going to make his way around, and we're going to finish cleaning both loops of track, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, if you look at these 2 lengths of track, you can see the difference between a cleaned track and a track that still needs to be cleaned because it still has all the crud on it from over the winter. So the track on the right has not been cleaned, and the track on the left, you can see the rails are much shinier. That track has been cleaned. So let's see if I can Look down here. So we've done it right up to about there. You can see even on that track there to the right, you can see it's cleaned. That's as far as we've gotten just before we stop, just to show you the difference here. And then you can see we got to continue around and clean that dirty track until both loops look like this. All right, so the last step in setting up the Garden Railroad is to set out the buildings. Now, we're not going to set the people out just yet because it's a very hot day and we waited until the sun is kind of going behind the trees, so it's a little bit cooler. So for tonight, we're just going to set out the buildings. You'll catch the people in a subsequent video, the little people we have or figures. But for now, let's get those buildings out. All right, so that's it. We've got all our buildings laid out here. We'll just take a quick walk around so that you can see them a little bit. This little area here with Dan's Burgers, I think we mentioned last year, we're going to try to put like a little zoo in here. I'm not sure how that's going to work out because we have to kind of figure out a way to get some, zoo kind of fenced in areas and all that. Haven't really kind of decided how we're going to do that, but that's why Dan's Burgers is sitting all alone in that blank spot, is that we do have plans for that. And then we got our little station here. Coming around to the recreational area. And then down into, I guess, what you would call the kind of town area. So, like I said, we didn't put any people out yet, or some of the other vehicles that we have. We'll do that at another video. We just want to be in shape here where we can test a couple of trains and kind of consider the Garden Railroad open for the spring and summer of 2024. All right, guys, now that we have our fountain going and our plants planted and our track cleaned and our buildings out, it's now time to test the both loops of track, make sure everything's running good. And so we have our nice USA Trains Train Power 10 power supply hooked up there. You might even be able to hear that fan running. It's set to G scale. And we have our little LGB tendered locomotive there on the outside loop. So yeah, let's give it a test. And as you can see, it's moving pretty good. It's a nice little locomotive we picked up from a train show, used, but it runs really, really good. All right, let's test the inside loop. All right, so with our fountain now running, and you can see how that's cleared up quite a bit. You can see the stones very well through the water there. We got our plants planted, track cleaned, buildings out, and our locomotives have been successfully tested on both loops. I think we are ready for the 2024 garden railroading season. So there are still a few things we have to do, as we mentioned earlier. We still have to put the people out. I think there's some other kind of accessories we have to put out. We do have to hide that extension cord for the that goes to the pump for the fountain. But yeah, we'll chip away at all that stuff. But the essentials here are complete. We are ready to go for the season. So hope you enjoyed that little segment on how we get our railroad ready to run. One thing I did want to mention though, before even any of the stuff that we did to get ready for this video, we did do some initial cleanup during the spring. So like there were like leaves and things like that in the garden railroad that we actually got beforehand that weren't part of this video, just because it was part of our early spring cleanup. We get the blower out and kind of blow everything off. So that was kind of already done. And what else? I think that might have been it. Just kind of get the leaves off there. Oh, there were a bunch of leaves. We took a lot of leaves out of the pond during the video that was sunk down, but there were a lot of leaves on the surface of the pond that we had taken off, kind of off video here. So yeah, just those two small things are things that didn't make the video, but are part of the cleanup. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, we're going to see you in subsequent garden railroading videos throughout the summer and the fall. So keep watching, and thanks for watching.